The UK needs to deal with its e-scooter problem. More on that coming up. But first, another day, another app from Jack Dorsey. The Twitter co-founder has announced an app called Sunday just 1 week after releasing the peer-to-peer messaging app BitChat. While BitChat is an internet-free app for communicating with friends over Bluetooth, Sunday is all about, well, the sun. The latest app tracks your UV exposure and how much vitamin D you get. It does this using a few personal details, including your location. Sunday also asks you to share what kind of clothing you're wearing, such as light, shorts, and t-shirt. There's an additional space for you to share your skin type, choosing from one of 6 options. From there, it shows you the current UV index, high for the day, sunrise, sunset, and burn limit, or the time you can be outside before your skin starts to burn. You can get your supposed vitamin D intake while outdoors by clicking Track UV Exposure. Like its week-old sibling, Sunday is currently available in beta on test flight. You can download the service through Apple's App Store and see if there are spots available to try out Sunday. Find the latest gadgets and tech updates right now at Engadget.com. E-scooters could be a vital tool to eliminate unnecessary car journeys, cutting emissions and journey times. Unfortunately, the UK is the last major European nation to not allow them to be ridden on most public roads. They've proliferated illegally anyway and are now an issue the country can no longer afford to drag its heels on. The benefits of e-scooters are obvious. They're cheap to buy and maintain, cost very little to run, and have a small physical and environmental footprint. In 2022, the Fraunhofer Institute found that e-scooters contributed to a drop in carbon emissions in several cities that embraced micromobility. The raw materials that get into making one EV could be used for more than 100 e-scooters. Collective Mobility UK, the body representing the shared transport industry, found that 21% of all shared e-scooter trips in the UK were made in place of using a car. Richard Dilks, CEO of Collective Mobility UK, said that e-scooters plumb directly into so many policy goals that the government has, most notably its need to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Collective Mobility UK's research indicates more than half of all car trips could be replaced by e-bikes or scooters, eliminating 1 megaton of CO2 emissions per year. Unfortunately, the UK does not have a vehicle class addressing personal transportation outside the realm of bikes, motorcycles, and cars. E-scooters, segways, hoverboards, gas-powered kick scooters, U-wheels, like the One Wheel, and electric unicycles are all in this gray zone. In the UK, they're given the umbrella term of powered transporters, but have no strict legal definition. Consequently, they're legally defined as motor vehicles, but because they lack most of the key features of a motor vehicle, which includes both a lack of safety equipment like seatbelts and airbags, as well as the owner paying road tax, having insurance, and being licensed to drive one, it's illegal to use them on public roads and sidewalks. And the absurdity of the situation is made worse, given that e-bikes have fairly minimal regulations on speed and motor output power and have consequently become ubiquitous. Despite this classification issue, it's legal to buy e-scooters at a number of major retailers. All a seller has to do is provide accurate information about the legal restrictions on their use, that they're only allowed to be used on private land, and they're in the clear. Take this retail listing for the Pure Air 5, which even advises users it's good for quick trips, comfortable rides, and daily use. It's only at the very bottom of the page, hidden below the cart pop-up, that the disclaimer saying they cannot be used on public highways is displayed. As you can imagine, technically illegal use of e-scooters on roadways is rampant. There is no accurate data on precisely how rampant, but the UK government believes more than 1 million privately owned e-scooters are used on public roads. These e-scooters, not part of a sharing scheme and therefore illegal, are nevertheless used with impunity. The London Assembly believed that in 2021 there were more than 150,000 privately owned e-scooters in London alone. Meanwhile, the Metropolitan Police, the force covering Greater London, seized only 1,000 167 e-scooters between 2021 and mid-2024. It's an all-too-common sight to see people riding these scooters despite the risks, which are severe. It varies between police forces, but riders caught face losing their e-scooter, a fine of up to £300, around $400, and having at least 6 penalty points put on their driving license. Easy availability and limited enforcement mean the rules on e-scooter use isn't clear in the public's mind. Last year, the UK government published data showing almost half the people polled incorrectly believed private e-scooter use on public highways was legal. In 2020, as part of its strategy to broaden public transit options during the COVID lockdowns, the UK authorized a series of short-term e-scooter trials, as well as offering people low-carbon ways of traveling that didn't involve sharing other people's air. The trials would inform how the government regulated e-scooters. These trials were run by sharing companies in 30 areas, which were subject to speed limits, age restrictions, and were only allowed to be ridden on roads or cycle paths rather than walkways. Many companies insisted only riders with driving licenses were allowed to participate. 2 years later, the country stated its intention to classify and regulate power transporters at the start of that legislative period. But the collapse of the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson's cabinet meant it was put on hold. Then the UK went through 3 prime ministers in the following 3 years, and micromobility has not been a priority for any of them so far. In fact, the only thing the government has done is repeatedly extend the deadline for the trial operations, most recently to May 2026. And that's where we're at. Late last year, Transport Secretary Louise Hay said that the government will look to legislate at some point in the future. The earliest that could happen is at the next legislative session, which would not begin until the fall of 2025. Naturally, the passing of such a law would not be a swift process and would likely be held up as e-scooters are their own front in the culture war. The UK's Royal Society for the Protection of Accidents believes, not unsurprisingly, that the legal regime should impose strong safety standards and vehicle checks. It also advocates a system to train riders, which has to be completed before they are permitted to operate an e-scooter. Additionally, given its concern for other users, it wants to see safe and accessible parking implemented in order to prevent the issue of e-scooters dumped in the street. The UK government doesn't know how many privately owned e-scooters are on its roads, but it is starting to collect data about its effects. The Department for Transport published statistics through to the end of 2023, but admitted the numbers aren't entirely accurate. Still, the trends are obvious. Accident tallies spike each summer, mostly taking place between 4 and 6 p.m. during the evening rush hour. And young people are being injured in far greater numbers. Males between the ages of 10 and 29 make up the majority of those affected. Earlier this year, BBC News reported 2 children aged 16 and 9 died as a result of their e-scooter being struck by a car. In short, the lack of regulation hasn't just stunted an environmentally preferable alternative to cars, it seems to also be putting young riders at risk. Thanks for listening to the show. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Today's show featured journalism by Engadget contributor Daniel Cooper and was produced by Spoken Layer. I'm Imran Sheikh, and as always, we'll talk more tomorrow.
Spoken Layer.